Hi, I'm Adam Geis.
I'm David Lurch.
We're hosts of the EdTech Distilled podcast, which is a part of the Education Podcast Network.
Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Folks, I promise you, not minutes ago, at least in the scope of a lifetime, not minutes ago, I was asleep. Josh, welcome back to the High Tech Podcast. We're here, aren't we? We're awake. We're ready to go.
We are awake, which you would say, like, isn't that normal? And I would say, normally, yes, but Will's had a day, you know?
Will's had a week.
Will's had a week. We had a weekend, if you will.
Busy.
Yeah, it's been a little busy.
Josh and I typically get on around 6:30 p.m. on a Tuesday evening to start recording the podcast. And this week, I did not sleep last night. I was not a great day for the sleeping. And I told him, I was like, I'll be on at 6:30. But I'm laying down. And I laid down and I showed up like 8 minutes later. I was like, I don't even know how I set my alarm wrong, but I set it for like 5 minutes after when I told him. And
it's fine.
We're here.
You woke up. We're recording. We're doing our thing. I tried for a second to record by myself, but then I realized that was stupid.
You can do it. We should try that. We should see if we
individual episodes. That'd be boring. I like talking to people. I don't I run out of ideas when I talk by myself.
What would we do? Talking by ourselves for 30 minutes.
I don't know. Like I've done public speaking. But we usually
it's a little different though. I mean, this is literally just like,
this is
hey, so
like
camera, I'm here.
Yeah, it's what everybody wants, clearly. We are back at the High Tech Podcast this week, and we are continuing the opening AI series. If you missed it, Will did little animations.
little hand art. I did some hand art.
It was very quick and kind of like intentional. I can't even pull it off. You were like, boop, boop, boop.
Yep.
Like
I did it.
Yeah, you did it. Sorry, opening AI series where we are digging into AI. Surprise. Wow. Title is on the nose.
What?
Yeah.
Artificial intelligence. The use of artificial intelligence in the world that we're in right now. We know this is steeped. I can't get away from this. I can't have a conversation that doesn't connect to AI, right? I do a kind of weekly prompts with a professional group that I'm part of, Pedagogy, and I just put out a kit like, what are folks using right now in their tech toolkit? And I'm expecting Miro, Lucidchart, Notion. I'm expecting Articulated Storyline, right? And like every single person had in their list, well, I'm using ChatGPT. I'm using ID Assist. I put that on our list. We should take a look at ID Assist.
Oh, yes, I've heard of this. Yeah.
Every single person, like some of the first things or a couple of the things they were using were AI focused. And I was like, holy smokes, we can't get away from this. Yeah. And I think it's beauoff. I think this is a really cool moment.
A perfect example of that is like I had the same experience. I was on Thursday. We've talked about this before. I'm a project management nerd. So much so that I got certification and I'm now part of the Project Management Institute. And they had a huge webinar on Thursday. And members got in for free. So I went. Thank you, PMI, for doing that for free. So it's cool. I got
not
to listen.
Personal mortgage insurance, but the
Project not that. Although that would probably be helpful too. Anyway, if it was that topic, that was totally not what we talked about. Anyway, really cool event. Had a lot of cool people, project management. But like, I was like, okay, I'm not going to be doing an education webinar today, so maybe I won't have multiple sessions on AI pop up. And I was wrong. Like it was multiple sessions on how to do project management in the world of AI, how to do You're right. Like AI it's interesting. I think the thing with AI, this will come out in some of our later episodes in the series with actually the next one coming up after this with a guest, which we'll talk about in a little bit. The interesting thing about AI is just the way it's permeated culture as a technology in a way we haven't seen in a little while. Like we've had kind of these like pivot moments in technology. We were talking about this with one of the guests. Which is like this idea of like, when personal computers came along, right? Like that really changed things in education, but across the world. I think we saw not quite the level, but with like the mobile phone, the smartphone type of idea that really transformed the way we interacted in the world, the way education worked, and we haven't seen that since that for a little while. Like, if we're being honest, nobody's really made like crazy advancements since then. Apple's just been like, here's the new iPhone. We're like, oh, it looks like the last one, but it's a slightly different size than the other 4 you came out with.
When your iPhone name starts to sound like a legislative bill, the iPhone XR P4, like what?
Yes.
Sorry.
We've reached a level. But AI has become something different. It's this very much kind of pivot technology that we're still in the midst of understanding what its impacts actually are, but it's literally everywhere. It's permeating tons of tools that we use. People are doing AI across the board, and there's tons of different fields, from education to project management to business, finance, design, everybody has ways that AI is changing the way they do what they do. So that's our spiel that we probably should have said in the first episode. Things are kind of permeating everything.
It's fine. But at the same time, Josh, like, weaving in a transition here from where we are coming from, where we're going with this specific episode. When you think about Google, Google as a search bar was an early tool that only did one thing. I mean, can anyone fathom a day when Google only did one thing? But that is why today we say Google that. We don't say go search it or go look it up on the internet. You say go Google that, because it was the premier search tool. And it took time for folks to not only get saturation, but figure out how to use it well. So much so that there is a very famous website that is the acronym, or I guess acrostic, I don't know. Let me Google that for you. I think that's lmgtfy.com or something like that, where like the joke was, hey, when did President Roosevelt serve? I don't know, dude. Google it, right? And you could joke with somebody, go to let me Google that for you, put in when did President Roosevelt, serve, and then send them a link, and it would literally open up Google in front of them, type the question in for them, and hit enter on Google, and then give them the search results. You've never heard of Let Me Google That For You?
Existed.
Dude, I don't know.
I typed it in the box.
Absolutely. No. Let me Google that for you.
That's probably because, like, I was going to throw in here for a second. I'm still a little depressed that, like, Ask Jeeves didn't win that competition. Like, this is like a quick aside. Like, imagine how different our lives would be if Ask Jeeves had won the search competition online. Like, it would no longer be, why don't you just go Google that? It would be like, just go ask Jeeves. Go ask your butler. Like,
and
like,
how
I'm just saying.
The advertising would have been so great around the Marvel Cinematic Universe with Jarvis, right? Like, there's that closeness. It should have been Jeeves 100%. And Jarvis. Could you imagine
think Jeeves would have
Ryan
taken
Reynolds
care of us better than Google? Just saying.
Amen. Preach.
Jeeves wouldn't have hurt us.
Ryan Reynolds doing a commercial with Jeeves and Jarvis in one scene. Like, I can just see it, right? Deadpool. Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool interviewing Jeeves and Jarvis. That's the marketing we missed because Google won the battle.
Anyway, that's a different thing. We'll still be sad about that later tonight.
the point I forgot and was sneaking up to is, how do we prompt AI? Prompt engineering is now this huge field. It's exploding, and ironically, it's nothing new, because we've already had to go through the cultural life cycle of figuring that out with Google. How do you Google something? Like, it actually takes some effort. If you, Mom, I love you. Sorry, this is not a bad thing, right? But if you put my mom and I side by side on a quick Google test, and you said, find this information, right? Whatever it was, tell me to find something, tell her to find something. I'm going to get it on the first search. She's not. That, I understand how the search terms work, how Google works, and I'm going to use the right keywords. I'm going to use the right sentence structure. I might, add in a like term or a like app that'll help refine my search, right? Like, I have Google search prompt engineering. Now we are looking at, how the heck do we do this with ChatGPT and the plethora of tools that are spinning up around this?
That's a good point. Like it's interesting how history repeats itself in many ways, right? Like with Google, that I don't remember that happening with Google, mainly because probably I was at the point where like I just didn't use it until I used it, and I was just like, oh yeah, I type things into the boxes. But you're right, we have certain ways we type things into Google, and we're so early in the process for ChatGPT and AI in general that like we kind of act like this is something we haven't lived before. Like, no, we did. Like, this is just, it's a different version. And that shows, I think, the influence that AI is having. Because, like, for so long, we've been so... Actually, I was just listening to The WAN Show. It's another podcast. You can listen to it. They are much bigger than we are. Thank you, Linus Tech.
Just retweet us once, please. We'll be famous.
Yeah, retweet, that would be great. But they were talking recently in one of the shows I was listening to, basically kind of just working through this idea that like that tech in of itself and the stuff we're experiencing, we're so early on that we forget that like we've lived this journey already with other technologies. Like we've experienced this with Google. We've had such stability for such a long time in technology and the tools that are offered to us that we've kind of forgotten what it's like to have things really shaken up. I mean, like really shooken up. Like that's what's happening with AI. Like things are really starting to get flipped on its head on what we expect and what we do. So to your point, let's talk about how to write prompts. Let's talk about how to do this stuff. Now, this is going to be funny because like in 5 years from now, this episode is going to be useless because people will be like, I already know how to type AI prompts.
We will put this in the museum of podcast episodes.
Yes, this will be in the museum of podcast episodes. But for right now, it'll be helpful. Now, just because I'm curious, I know I've used AI a bit more than you have in a little while. What's been your experience though with writing prompts for AI? Like, have you had frustrating moments? Have you had moments where you're like, this works great? Like I'm curious, and I have my story that I think will help lead us further into this then.
Well, and like to quickly qualify it or quantify it, I think we probably have done this in each episode so far, but the number hasn't changed, folks. He might use it daily. I think I've still used ChatGPT like 10 times. I'm not even sure. It's not my everyday. Like I'm not driving from this tool. I don't know. I just don't have that many burning questions to answer. I don't know.
Do you have any tools that have AI built? So like for me, for instance, context people, my most interaction with AI actually is not necessarily with ChatGPT directly. It's with other AI tools in the tools I already use on a daily basis in my tool set that now have AI integrated into them and are using OpenAI the same basis as ChatGPT. Yeah. I very rarely actually go to the ChatGPT website anymore. Because I'm using it in other places, AI. Or I'm using like there's a lot of conversation about how the new big thing is not necessarily even ChatGPT. It's Chrome extensions and web browser extensions that now use AI that are using some things in a different way. But either way, anyway, I was just curious. Like, did you ever write a prompt like in the times you played with it? Have you had a prompt you've written where you're like, that did not give me what I wanted?
Yes, and hold me accountable to that. But the one thing I want to actually say is my biggest takeaway from using ChatGPT consistently, like a couple of times, and trying to work on a project again. I have no true estimate of what a word count is. Okay, like I'm gonna put this into context real quick, right? Do you have that person? It could be your spouse who has no sense of direction. Okay, we all know that person who has no sense 100%. Of direction. It's I love you, dude. Yep. Nope. Josh does not have a sense of direction. It's totally fine. But like when you say, oh yeah, that's like 10 miles away, I would never take your word for it. Right. Yeah. Like that's probably 60 miles away, or it's an hour away. Like every time I've tried to ask ChatGPT, like, give me this in 300 words, and it spits out something that's so long. So I'm like, man, did I want it in 30 words? Like I have never once, not once the first time told it like, give me this, re-summarize that in, take these 3 paragraphs and make it, it'll spit something back out to me. I'm like, no, ChatGPT, prove it. Was that 300 words? It's like, it's 297 words. I'm like, how? Like there's just so many more words.
Will's biggest takeaway is college did not build into Will a word count system. Like,
I have no idea. That's cannot really estimate. Now, the reason this came up, and this circles back to your first question.
Yeah.
I was helping someone with their LinkedIn. I was helping a friend, and I love you, dude. I hope you listen to this episode. So I'm helping him on his LinkedIn, and we're trying to work up an objective statement. And he's like struggling. He's like, I don't know what the heck to put on this, the summary or the objective statement. I was like, then let's have ChatGPT write it. And I swear, we just like, got some big old paragraph worth of text. And I was like, give that to me in 300 words. And the first thing it did, it maybe took half of the text away, but it was still huge. I was like, holy crap, 300 words is a ton. Because I wanted to fit in a little small box in LinkedIn. I realized like by the end of it, I think that small box really fit like 75 words pretty well. I was really surprised.
Okay. Yeah.
But that took us probably 20 minutes of giving it keywords, trying to like include elements of his resume in it. Like I was baffled how long it took us to get ChatGPT to write 5 or 6 sentences.
Okay.
Because we didn't know what we were trying to do.
Yeah. So I'm curious. I want to dig into this for a second. So you mentioned something about like pulling in resume. So were you trying to give it content and then like pull some concepts into it for an objective statement? How did you go about this? Is my reverse way of getting to how to maybe write a prompt. And I'm curious. Yep,
do it.
How did you go about writing the prompt for that? Do you remember?
No, and of course I delete. Like I'm a clean freak. I've deleted all my old chats. Okay, and I'm like kicking myself for that now. I'll literally keep every chat in ChatGPT from here on out. What I would say, I remember is like I copy and pasted like the bullet points under his job titles and stuff, and like I was like, hey ChatGPT, here, I need to write this. I said I need to write a LinkedIn learning or LinkedIn objective statement or summary statement about a person. This person has done these tasks and responsibilities. I want it to be 300 words. Still kicks me how much content that is. I don't know why I'm sorry. I'll move on from the 300 words. And I was like, include references to these characteristics like leader, manager, kind, customer service orient. I don't know, like we just came up with a list of 5 to 7 things. And I was like feeding that into it over a couple of prompts. And the end result wasn't too bad once I got it small enough.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was not fun to get from there to the final product.
Okay. That's interesting. I was curious because so my first thing that I think I would throw out about prompt writing in general, and I'm by no means an expert in it. I've been doing it more now and playing around with it. And I find it interesting. And as Will knows, we were talking earlier, I have a handful of people in the Twitter sphere that I'm getting posts constantly about how they're doing prompts and things like that because I find this interesting and the algorithm knows how to give me the content I want.
Yep.
And so a couple things I've taken away from doing prompt writing and trying to get AI to do what you want. So like your point about what you're doing, one thing I think you did well is that you told it to focus on some traits. So like this is one of the things I think people need to understand when you're doing AI. A lot of the places I see people go wrong in prompt writing is they're not specific enough. We as people forget the assumptions we make about the words we communicate. And AI does a really good job of showing our assumptions because it's not a person. It can't read context. It can't understand what you're trying to do. So when you write something out, it takes it very literally. And so if you're not specific, you're not going to get a specific response back. And I've actually done a lot of this where a lot of my experience doing AI has been Notion AI. We all know I love Notion. If you listen to the podcast, it's my obsession. And people at the office make fun of me now because Notion AI is like my little buddy. Like it's just kind of follows me around wherever I'm doing things. I use it all the time, mainly as a spell check, but I've been using it as summarizing things. And so
have you asked it for directions anywhere yet?
I have not. That it does not do a great job with. Notion AI is limiting itself inside the pages system that you're using.
Yeah, it's fair. It's fair.
So, but either way, what I've noticed, especially when you're asking it to kind of generate content from other content, is being specific is what you need to do. So like a perfect example of this would be, so we were doing a session at the institution I work on or work at. And
Both.
both probably, for being honest. And we were doing like an AI. We've done a couple different AI sessions and series over the past couple months, because our office is focused on digital learning, so that's right up our alley. And we've been partnering with Justin Harbin, who's been on the podcast before. And so we were doing a bunch of series of faculty. And one of the experiments we decided to do while we were doing it is we were going to record the Zoom sessions that we were doing. We were going to we were using multiple tools to do this because we were jerry-rigging some free access. We were going to use Otter AI that we've talked about before on the podcast to generate transcripts for the meeting. And then I threw that into Notion AI and asked Notion AI to summarize the meeting, giving us like 4 bullet points of takeaways, right? So like summaries. So we're going to see what it did. When I first started doing this, the mistake I made was I took all the text, right? It's probably 300 words. And then I took all the transcript, put it into Notion, highlighted all of it, and said, summarize this. Here was the interesting thing it did. It tried to summarize everything in a handful of bullet. I think I did give it a number. I said, I said a few bullet points. I have
not a word count.
Yeah, not a word count. I have a very different definition, apparently, of a few than Notion AI does, because I got like 12. And because it was a large
few
document.
Of 87 is.
Yeah, a few of 87, whatever. It gave me 12 to start off with. And then also, it hyper-focused on like this first part of the conversation that we had that had nothing to do with the topic of AI. It was an intro conversation that we were doing. And
you're asking each other what you had for lunch, how the weather was.
So I found something interesting. It was summarizing the words, but it wasn't, when I said summarize this text, it didn't read it as necessarily summarize everything in the text, right? It basically took the text and just started summarizing into bullet points. And so I had to change my prompt, right? So I got more specific. I basically wrote, first of all, I don't want 12 bullet points. So I wrote, summarize in 3 bullet points was where I started to go. But I also added in summarize this whole text and ignore this part of the topic part of the conversation was. I forget what it was. It was like something about a textbook. So it was like, ignore the first paragraph about textbooks.
Okay.
And focus in on, and I added this in, focus in on conversations about artificial intelligence, its benefits and its negative, whatever it was, like negatives, things like that. When I wrote the prompt that way, I got a much better set of 3 bullet points. Now notice how I changed the prompt. The first prompt was summarize this text in a few bullet points. I got more specific in the next one. I said, summarize this whole text, right? I added in the clarifier of 3 bullet points. I added in the clarifier of ignore that first paragraph, basically that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. And I added in the clarifiers of focus in on the conversations about AI, the positives and negatives, right? So what that told the AI tool in Notion to do was ignore all the other fluff in between. It told it the number of bullet points I wanted, and it told me what to look at and what not to look at, and it made sure to clarify with it, I want you to summarize everything here, not just portions that you focus on, but the whole thing. It still wasn't perfect. It was a lot of text to ask it to summarize. It was like a 45-minute Zoom session.
Whoa.
But it was a lot better. It got a lot of the good focus points.
And you didn't have 12 bullet points.
I didn't have 12 bullet points. So, those are some of the things I would mention. When you're writing this stuff out, make sure it's an action. Make sure you're asking it to do something, right? That you're being specific about what you want it to do. If you want it to give you 300 words, be specific about that. Say 300 words. Provide context. So like, Will, a thing, I don't know how it played out in what you were doing, but you added it sounds like you added context in to a LinkedIn objective statement, right?
Right. I told it something we were working on.
Yeah, told it wanted a LinkedIn objective statement. Here's the thing, though. I'm not sure the AI actually knows what a LinkedIn objective statement's supposed to be. So
right,
like
that's fair. I could have
where-
asked it for an example, maybe. I could have like tried to find out if it did something.
So like
if
that
it
might
knew
be
what I was
where I
going
give
for.
an example. Like you can do stuff like that. Like so a perfect example of this would be Will and I were working on a project for something we're trying to do with Harness Tech, the company that we started. And so we're creating articulate storyline content. And we had to write a script. Right, so Will had written the first half of the script, which was
this
on,
is scary. This part is literally this story is scary.
Yeah, how to do audio, audio.
How to do an audio
podcast. Yeah, audio podcast. So you'd written out a really good script. We needed to get a second half of the script, right? And we're only doing this in a weekend. This is like a demo that we're doing for someone.
And I was tired of writing.
We don't have a lot of time. Will's pinging me going, I'm running out of creativity for this script. I didn't have a lot of time to commit towards writing, so I got an idea. I was like, I'm going to copy Will's first part of the script, like for the section on how to do audio recording for podcast. I'm going to put it in Notion as an exemplar text, and then I'm going to ask Notion to provide me. This is the prompt I wrote to it, Will, when I got the creepy text that that was interesting. I wrote. I highlighted all the text. I said, give me a it was like a paragraph worth of text. Give me a paragraph similar or written in the same tone and style as this paragraph, but make it about video podcast recording and focus in on equipment and techniques.
Okay.
And I hit enter. And as Will experienced, it proceeded to provide us a paragraph that sounded like Will wrote it.
Yeah. I didn't like it.
Was on video recording and was almost perfect. Like it.
I think I changed 2 words.
You changed 2 words. It literally followed Will's text patterns perfectly. Like the way, the structure, the things you focused on in the first couple sentences, and then the second, it followed that identically, except replaced audio with video and replaced the tools that we were talking about. Like in the first paragraph, you talked about mics and like sound quality. It replaced it with cameras and video quality and 1080p. Like it was, it replaced all that stuff.
It put the facts in. It literally put the facts in without us trying.
So, but break apart my prompt for a second here. Notice what I did. I said, I gave it an example of what I wanted it to look like. So in the case of
and just 1 second. So, and you do this across a couple of prompts, right? Like, or did you give it my text and you say, do something. Okay.
Yeah, that was all one prompt. I wrote it all. I mean, it might have been a couple sentences, but it was all essentially one prompt. One thing.
Okay. Not like several
I broke
submissions.
yours into smaller sections. That would be the other recommendation. Like I didn't take all the paragraphs Will wrote and replicated a script. I took the different paragraphs in smaller units and then did a similar prompt for each one so that the AI had time to focus on each prompt area, essentially.
Okay, got it.
But so take this and let's compare it to the LinkedIn thing. Okay. So, in the first prompt, right, I gave an example text. What you could have done for the LinkedIn thing to get this working better is go find an example on LinkedIn of a good, or like Google, like go find a good LinkedIn objective statement or like something that you're really like looking for, right? And use that to give AI an example. Don't just tell AI to rewrite that person's work as your own, but like use it as an example for the sentence structure and things that you want, right? So like use that example. Then notice I was super specific. Write this in the same tone and style. Now you don't necessarily need to do that every time, but I wanted it to sound like Will. Because Will had written the first part of the script. So I specifically said that. Like for instance, if I'm having AI help me with content creation, I might write a couple examples beforehand, like of stuff that I want, and then take that, give that to ChatGPT and say, can you rewrite this in this style and tone, but with this content? And then notice the second part of what I did. I was super specific. I didn't just say, rewrite this with the same style and tone, but about video recording. I wrote same style and tone about video recording and focus on these 2 things. Because if you know what you want the primary pieces of the content to be, then you should tell AI that. Or else it's not going to know, right? So break this apart for a second and basically just say this. Make it a clear action. Provide as much context as you can, right? Use references if you can. Content references if you can. Give examples. And be super specific. Give all the context you want. Tell it where to focus, right? Treat AI like a bad college student. Because that's what AI is. At the end of the day, AI is kind of like a bad college student. Like if I don't give a clear enough prompt, they will give me something
that is way horrible, too good.
Right? That's
and when you walk back those suggestions, Josh, that kind of makes me like feel or go through the feeling of what we did to write that LinkedIn Learning objective. I was like, I started too vague. I got a little closer. I had to keep doing, because that's why I was asking you what you did. Like, did you get that all in one prompt or what two prompts? Like, I had to sit there and have a conversation with ChatGPT.
Yeah.
All right, ChatGPT, give me this. Bleh. Oh, dang it, that's wrong. Okay, take that and do it this way. Still wrong. Okay, take that. It's still too long. I need, and that was where I was like, okay, do it in 300 words. Do it in 200 words. Do it in 75 words. Like I was shrinking it was part of those iterations, but some of it was changing the tone. Some of it was like, I gave it a list of characteristics and it literally put the list in. I was like, no, break up the list. Like, don't just say I am a strong, motivated, interesting, independent. It's like that was what it did with the list I gave. I'm like, so over 20 minutes, I got to that. But like, if I had a strong initial prompt, I might only have to tweak it once or twice, as opposed to having a conversation with a dumb college student.
Yeah. Like that's what it is. I think and some of it will be back and forth. Like I've had those situations, like where I'm using Notion AI and I go back and forth with it a bunch. Like one of my favorite things right now to do with Notion AI is write something and then have it try to make it shorter. Like just tell it like make this shorter, because I tend to write longer. Like I want things shorter, so I do that. And then I go back and forth with it like 18 times. Because I'm like, okay, you didn't know the context though, so you removed that word. If you could
that I needed,
so like here's where I could speed that up. If I knew I wanted these 3 terms in the sentence and I wanted to make it shorter, I could say make this shorter, but make sure not to remove boom, boom, boom. Like make sure not to remove these words or this context in your prompt. You literally could have said in the beginning, right? Pull in these bullet points, but don't just list them out. Add some context in between. Right? Yep. Like AI can handle that now. Like it could handle doing those things. And at the end of the day, you will still always need a human editor to do what you're doing with AI. Like never just copy what AI comes out with, because it is always going to have this empty, non-human feeling to the way it writes. So anything I do with AI, most of the steps I do is I usually never ask AI just to like make stuff up for me without something else I've tried to do. I think is where I've tried. One, because I just don't want to be that person who's just having AI generate all my content for me and not have myself in it. And so I try to put myself in it from the beginning and then have AI do the monotonous work I don't care to do for 4 hours. That's one of my things. But then I'm always editing afterwards, like always carefully reading what is AI like ChatGPT create for me? What does it do? If you're using AI to do image creation, if you're using it to do video stuff, like always checking to see what the final product looks like and tweaking it, and messing around with it. At the end of the day, I still think working with AI is creative. It's a different creativity. We're seeing some people get really creative about how they write prompts for image generation and video generation and audio generation. Like it's really interesting to see how it's becoming an art form to even get AI to do things. So that's cool.
That's why prompt really cool engineering is becoming a thing. Like people are saying it takes work to learn how to do this well. And just making sure we're in the right order here. Yeah, like our last episode with My School AI, like those folks, some of their tools, I don't say this to belittle their tools at all. Like some of their tools are ChatGPT with some of that prompting already going on in the background.
They figured out what prompts work, and they're developing it so you don't have to come up with it on your own. I think there's a lot of value in doing that.
The tool ID Assist is in a similar way. Like it helps you review design blueprints. It helps you review scripts. It helps you do a lot of stuff, which means they first had to take the time in the background of the large language model and train it into a context. And that context is what, like, it's really what Josh is speaking to with his strategies of like, try this, then try that, like do it in a certain sequence. if ChatGPT has the context, it can be really effective. If you just ask ChatGPT, write me a script about something, it really isn't going to get there. It doesn't know what that means. So that's where prompting and chat, this whole conversation is so important to AI. Like, in some ways, going back to my first little analogy, we just need to learn how to talk to it like we learned how to talk to Google.
Yeah.
And still, I think, my mom, some parents, some folks, as an example, still don't know how to talk to Google, and ChatGPT is going to be all the harder. But there's the technical concerns, there's privacy concerns, there's you got to learn APIs to integrate with it. There's the like hard science side of AI, but this is what you can do. This is what anyone can do, is learn how to write prompts and how to engage with it more effectively. That's why we dedicated an entire episode to this, because I think there's a lot of teachers who will benefit from this product, this tool, this moment, but you need to spend some time with it. And seriously, Josh is probably going to write down these numbered lists in some sort of video or with our episode page, but just follow that list. Like, make sure you get your context, make sure you give it examples, do it, because that will make your prompting so much more efficient. Don't waste the irony to me of using ChatGPT with my buddy to try and give him that LinkedIn learning objective is it took us 20 minutes to do that. And I could have just written the paragraph. I mean, right? Like, I could have just written the paragraph in those 20 minutes. We had fun, it was an exercise, but like, next time I sat down to do it, I probably could get the answer on the first time because I did it once. And that's human nature. That's life. That's any skill, right? The more times we do it, the more efficient we will be at doing it again in the future. Take advantage of tools like My School AI and others that are going to help you do it from the get-go. But before that, you can do it following this methodology.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's tons of tools that are working on making it easier, more accessible to do that stuff, prompt writing for you, stuff like that. My School AI, which you talked about the last episode, check that out if you didn't yet. They're doing some stuff. Like, I plug Notion AI all the time. They have pre-written prompts and things that are super helpful and very powerful. Like the summarize, reduce, all that stuff that they've pre-written in there have been super helpful for me and what I'm doing. So definitely check those out.
Are we ready? I'm ready for a little bit of a journey. Are you?
Yeah, I mean, maybe, like the journey on the show Firefly, like, is that what you're feeling?
No.
Is that what you're, no?
You went to a journey from Firefly? No, I know, right? We usually sit to record or stand to record. And I was like, I'm going to go on a journey.
You're going to do both? You know what? I've been kind of wanting to stand for a second. So
let's two ships passing in the night, rotate, friends.
Yeah. This is why you watch video. You'll be missing
engaging.
The incredible journey of Will and I standing and sitting.
That's the worst transition, though, to one of our two apps for the week, which is MidJourney. I wanted to get in on the transition for this because I have not used it. I know what it is. But I figured Josh would have an expert opinion on this matter. So MidJourney.
Yeah, maybe. We'll see. I haven't actually used MidJourney myself. I've watched a lot of people use it, and mainly come from my interactions with Corridor Crew and some other stuff in different places. And
another plug, if they ever retweeted us, we'd be famous.
Yeah, it would be great. No, Will and I when we were thinking about planning out the AI series, we wanted to do some focused app sections on different AI other than ChatGPT. Like we said in the first episode for the series, none of our apps for the episodes are ChatGPT, mainly because if at this point you're entering this opening AI series and you don't know ChatGPT, we've got a problem. So you can go back and check out our other episode about ChatGPT from a while ago. We want to focus in on some other tools. There's a lot of tools in AI floating around that are more than just ChatGPT. And we wanted to focus on two today, specifically around image generation. So this is something that's going to come up later in the series. It's actually something that was actually my first introduction to AI. It was not actually ChatGPT. My first introduction was what some podcasts I was watching were doing with visual AI generation. They were getting in on the AI train before ChatGPT launched in November. So this is what I kind of saw first. And so MidJourney is one of those. Another tool, the reason we made the Firefly joke, that launched recently that might be more accessible to some of you is Adobe. You missed it? I thought that's why you were giving me such credit. Oh,
I missed the joke. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I know Firefly, but the TV show Firefly is like
the TV show that was canceled too soon by the evil overlords known as Fox. If you're listening, Fox, I don't know who would be listening, but you know.
Yeah, hashtag not a sponsor. Fox, and you'll never be. Hashtag.
Yeah. Gosh. Took Nathan Fillion away from me. No, another one that's very well known or not well known per se, but was released and is getting a lot of traction is Adobe Firefly. So Adobe released their own AI engine that's photo generation that actually for now is free and accessible through the Adobe package, or even if you just have an Adobe account, but you don't have a full Adobe license, you can still use Adobe Firefly because they're still in beta. We all know Adobe, let's be honest, that'll go away soon, so get in while you can. But they're both AI generation tools. MidJourney is the same way. You basically drop in some prompts. You can get generated photos, and the same with Adobe Firefly. You put in prompts the same way you would with ChatGPT, and you get generated photos. Now, this is the same way as we were just talking with ChatGPT. The prompts need to be good. Like, you need to be clear about what you're doing, about what you're putting in. What's cool about seeing what people are doing with like MidJourney and even Firefly that's taking things to a different level is that you can actually program these tools on certain art styles. So you can put in types of art that are very similar and then basically tell it to run off of that art style and create like a photo of Will. So like, okay, here, let's give an example, right? Let's say I wanted a photo of Will in the style of the art from Lord of the Rings. Okay. So I want that style, right? I could use one of these tools and some of the other photo generation tools out there to put in those styles of art and then tell that app to generate them. And if I'm correct, I'm pretty sure MidJourney actually has like a library of art styles that they've been using. And so does Adobe Firefly that you can actually pick and choose. So again,
they have to train them, right? Like there's something there for the end, it's not perfect from the get-go.
Yeah, this isn't like ChatGPT where you're just getting text, and even ChatGPT, to get that text, they had to train it on a ton of the internet. So that's not most of it, right? So this is the same thing. They've got to train it on the photos to be able to get those styles. Like a good example was the group I was watching and following do this. They did stuff like that. They put in a bunch of like recently. They were putting in, this wasn't MidJourney necessarily, but it was photo video generation. They put in a bunch of anime styles and actually generated their own anime style characters off of this type of stuff. Yeah. So why is this helpful for education? I don't know about you, but I suck at drawing. This is like 100% the case.
I try to find any tool I possibly can to do drawings, illustrations, icons for me.
Yes, I love Canva because I don't have to draw. I just find things and I can create good images and interfaces through Canva. But I can't draw or create my own artwork or anything like that, right? So a lot of what we're coming up with, even in like Canva when I'm creating stuff, is either based off of shapes that I combine together or off of stock elements that I get out of Canva or images I get out of Canva. Right? They have some AI generation in Canva for image creation. It's not at the level MidJourney and Adobe Firefly are right now. I'm just going to say that pretty clearly. But this, you could actually generate your own artwork. Like if you needed artwork for the classroom or for presentations to visualize something, we were talking about this. You'll get in this in the next episode. We were talking about like, imagine your writings, you're doing a presentation on, I don't know, tanks.
Why would we do that? Oh
right?
Gosh,
so like tanks. You want to visualize these 6 tanks next to each other to show size difference because clearly tanks are very different in size. I don't know. I don't actually know anything about tanks, but let's say you wanted to visualize that, right? Couple options right now. You can just grab a bunch of photos and try to visualize it, or you could use tools like Adobe Firefly or MidJourney to actually prompt that and generate a really cool piece of artwork to show that information in a presentation, right? Yeah. Like you could use it to generate other photos of things or scenes or whatever it may be. The key is that visuals combined with written text and things, sometimes a visual element will communicate more than describing it in text to someone.
Yeah.
And some of us out there have the art skill to be able to think and describe something and then make it appear. I am not that person. So this is where like a MidJourney or Adobe Firefly could fill the hole. Now this gives us some of the skills to be able to do that. To say I describe this thing and actually get a photo generated image of it that I could use in presentations and tools and things I'm doing for learning content. Imagine the image and learning content we could create for fully online courses or content that we're creating, that we're building. Think of all the stuff we could build in with using tools like MidJourney and Adobe Firefly. So that is those two tools. Adobe Firefly, like I said, you can access by signing up with an Adobe account. MidJourney is kind of like in a beta access thing. Will and I were trying to figure out how to actually get into MidJourney. We never really quite figured it out. They're set up
Not
through
perfect.
They're set up through Discord. MidJourney actually integrates with Discord. So it's set up that way. Go check out their website, midjourney.com. You should be able to find information about how to get started with them or how to use their tool. If that's a little overwhelming, because MidJourney is definitely more of the techie version of this. If that's a little overwhelming, go check out Adobe Firefly for now. That would be the other one I recommend if you're not willing to get into the more intense tech prompt writing and get into Discord. If you want to just find a tool that you could use a little bit easier, Adobe Firefly would be my recommendation, and you can go check that out on Adobe's website and sign up to get access to it. Whew.
I honestly didn't know that this episode was going to get long. Like this is a pretty typical episode length. I thought we might have been like a 30-minute episode with this one, but this is good.
Really?
Well done.
Stuff. There's a lot of prompt writing to do.
ChatGPT, give me this episode in 30 minutes.
Yeah.
You think I'm going to expect
it? We just made this up with ChatGPT. We don't even actually know how to write prompts. We asked ChatGPT, how do you write prompts?
ChatGPT, how do we use you?
Yes. And it proceeded to tell us to leave it alone, and it went and hung out with Jarvis. That's what happened. No.
I like that.
Anyway, that was our episode for today. Next week on the High Tech Podcast, we talk about how to write prompts again. No, I'm just joking. Next week, we are talking about can AI replace teachers? Right? So we are going to be talking to Joel
Cooperstein.
There we go. I had to think about it for a second.
I just leaned into it.
We connected with Joel online, and he has a ton of experience in education and a ton of experience with AI, and really is digging into how that can be used in education. So we talk about a lot of different things with Joel about AI, but we really start to dig into, will AI really replace the teacher? Will it fill that hole? I'm not going to answer that question right now. You need to come listen to that episode. Okay.
Tune in next
week, we're going to be talking about that in the opening AI series. Just a reminder again, if you don't already, follow us on Twitter and subscribe to us on YouTube by going to @HighTechPodcast. Please help us out. Our followers have boosted up on Twitter thanks to mostly Will just like following every human being in the universe.
Don't tell them my secret.
Yeah. So, but we love connecting with people. We had a great week last week connecting with Christy, who had been on the podcast, and a couple other people on Twitter. Will and I are not just doing this to talk through these mics. So go check us out on YouTube and Twitter. We want to talk with you and connect with you for the podcast. Also, if you want to reach us, you can hit us up at inbox@hightechpod.us. And also check out our website, hightechpod.us. That is where we put every episode page with the episodes, including extra content about the apps we talk about and how to get access to them and use them. So go check that out at hightechpod.us. Again, thank you for joining us for another week as we continue to learn what it looks like to harness AI specifically, all forms of it, whatever it may be, in the classroom, whether online or in person. See ya.